Lucia, you look so nice this morning.
I'm just getting into the office here in Durango this morning. So I don't know. I think I've forgotten how to park.
How to park.
Well, you know how the spaces here in Durango are so narrow that if you don't get it in the square, you're likely to have your door ding.
You got to get one of those cars that parks for you.
Yeah, that one commercial where it parks in there for you. Yeah.
No, that's okay.
Don't worry.
This one already actually, like, if it kind of can drive for you. So if you've got it on cruise control and you get within a certain distance of a car, it starts to pull you back.
Okay. Yeah, gotcha. Does it do the rumble? Like sometimes
it does. Yeah, like if you start veering off. Yeah. And it scores you after each ride what your percentage is as a driver. So I'm still holding an A.
Gee, so what's your top score so far?
Actually, you know what? I don't think it was all me because I'm not the only one who drives this car. So right now it's a 99. So that's not bad.
Yeah, no, that's good. I don't know if I could handle that. That's how it scores you. That'd be too much reinforcement to my wife that I'm a dangerous driver. So I don't know if that'd be a good thing for me.
Well, I just found out on the app you can actually set up a guest driver. So I didn't realize that till the other day. I'm like, oh, I'm going to put one in there. So whoever drives my car, they get their own score. And I think I don't know how it knows, how it senses who's driving. But anyway.
Oh boy, that's pretty cool. All right, Tom, you want to get the meeting started? Yeah.
Call the meeting to order. Do we want to approve Dave's minutes from the last meeting?
I move we approve the minutes from the last meeting.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thanks. And that was with George had a couple additions, so I added your additions to that and to amend those, George.
So I guess we'll forego the forestry program since Roman isn't here. And want to talk about the
yeah. Well, we can talk on the forestry just a second. We had a patron, Chris Wolf. He lives along Montezuma Avenue, so he requested for Montezuma Avenue to be looked at. So I know my park staff went and looked for dead branches or anything after these last windstorms we've had. So I did pass that along to Public Works, and they were gonna go take a look at it as well too, to do some high pruning, trimming of the trees there. So do try to respond when a patron says, something about the trees. We try to go out and look at it and see if it needs to be trimmed or whatnot to keep it safe. So on the band shell project, it was discussed at the April 13th council meeting. The band shell group was instructed now to take it through the planning and zoning process. So that's the gist I got out of the workshop, was they were to take it through the planning and zoning process and just, go through that. And I don't know if, I guess one question that still was a little bit unclear to me, if that through the planning and zoning process, if they would actually have a neighborhood meeting or what their process is with that. So that's what was kind of left up in the air to me, is how are we reaching out to the neighborhood? So I'll take that up with planning and zoning just to see if that's part of their process, or if we need to reach out to do anything to check with what the neighborhood, if who's going to reach out to the neighborhood basically. And then the other thing with that is the library through Public Works was showing a 50 acre, or not 50 acre, but a 50 space parking lot being added for the library expansion. And I never I never saw that plan until that was shared with council. So I think the city, we have some work to do to try to share information with the departments. Because that was the first I'd seen about a 50 space parking lot. And I would, from my perspective, I would have issue with that. That would go pretty substantially over taking out some trees, and I'd like to know more details of how you would fit that in without impacting the park and the trees. Any thoughts from the advisory board on that?
It's not unusual that there's sometimes poor internal communications. I built a park years ago where the two areas of public works, people putting in the fence and people putting in the sprinkler, didn't communicate with each other, and the sprinkler heads ended up on the outside of the fence. My point being, there's no short of bad communication in local government. So it doesn't surprise me that that could happen. But I think that, you know, it almost needs to have like a master plan for the park. And if somebody wants to do anything in the park, they have to compare it to like a master plan so that everyone's given notice.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that, because, could come up again, For example, the police department has a big footprint in the park there. And if they expanded or redid an entry point or something like that, that could have an impact on the park. The Kiva also, there just needs to be some mechanism where there's some alert for any future changes that, it's going to impact the park in some way. So,
it put me in an internally compromised position as well, because now I know this information, but I don't know that the band shell people knew that information at that time. And I tried to give a hint without giving the farm away to the band shell folks to say, you might want to check into, some further plans with the library expansion, because at that point in time, they didn't know that information. And I know, I believe the band shell group with Bob and the group and Jim, the designer, I think they've really tried to work with the city and on whatever dynamics with the library expansion that had to be worked through. And here was like this brand new information coming up that they really didn't know a whole lot of information about. So it put me in a very compromised position, I thought. So anyway, they did find out about it, and now they'll be working through P&Z to see, what's the prospects of that moving forward.
Well, how far along is the library parking lot expansion?
Well, just the library expansion project, I don't think there's any date. I mean, they have it in the year 5 of the capital plan, but that's just to peg it on the board somewhere. I don't think that's actually intended to be completed in 5 years from now. I just think they wanted to keep it on the radar. And that's what happens.
It's still in the planning stage.
Yeah, very, very much so. I mean, I think what the concern of our present council is that they don't give the proper or the use of the property away with the prospects of what could happen at the library. So they just don't want to give up the space if the library truly needs it for their future.
Well, it seems like if they go through this process of getting something on the master plan, it should go through all departments involved and get a checklist that everybody's got that information.
Yeah.
Especially you, Dean.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't think this whole.
yeah, it seems to me somehow, do you want us to back you up and, make a point to council that there needs to be something like a master plan, which has to go through Parks and Rec? Do you want that kind of push from us to give you some backing to go to council or something? Or
Well, I think as a department head, I just need to bring that up internally with my other department heads first and we'll see if we can get an improved process, I think internally. And if it doesn't, if this happens, I would say again, then I would want maybe some backing from the advisory board. But I think I just need to talk to the other party, one of the other parties involved, just to make sure that, you know, I'm involved in these processes. I think I know why it happened like this. I think it was to make a point to the band shell group. And I don't think it was, I don't even know if this 50 parking space is even legit. I mean, so right now the library expansion is looking at 180 person meeting room. And I just don't even know the validity of having a 180 I mean, right now the rec center, for example, has where we have about 100 people that can meet in our 2 meeting room spaces. So just, I mean, ballpark figure. So just to give you an idea, 180 spaces, wouldn't that be, I mean, Alan, wouldn't that rival almost, that's probably close to how big the Sunflower Theater is.
No, that's way bigger. The Sunflower is 119. Yeah.
Yeah. So it'd be that just to give people perspective. Yeah.
That's the size of the auditorium at the high school, probably.
Well, I think the auditoriums, isn't that closer to 400 to 500 people?
400 to 500. Yeah.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a large meeting room, but I mean, this is going to come up again. For example, what if the dog shelter decided to expand their footprint? You know, that would chew up part of the dog park or Denny Lake Park, you know, or something, you know? So, I mean, it just that has to go through, I would think, absolutely that stuff has to go through you.
Yeah, as part of the, I mean, it's when we did like the South Neighborhood Park, that went through a process. I mean, we contacted Public Works, we contacted planning and zoning. We even contacted the police department to say, how, with this design, how secure is this? What would you evaluate the security of this facility? What else do you want for security lighting? You know, that's to me the level of depth you should be going to with your internal departments, so they're on board with as you're moving forward.
Well, it seems like there needs to be a statement of use. I mean, that area is a park. It's not a parking lot. It's a park. Seems like it's slated for recreational use. The library was there and existing at the time. How much more can the library expand? How much can anything else expand into the recreational use without it being diminished so much that, you know, somebody's going to have to move somewhere?
Yeah, I think what happened was with the library's planning efforts, I thought whoever did the design work fell, and also the lead person from the city on that fell short on not, I mean, like they didn't even have a parking lot design. So, I mean, this parking lot design has come in later internally, and it should have been part of their planning process with the designers of that facility. So anyway, I think we probably need to move on, and I'll just keep you posted as I internally discuss these things with one of the major players in the city. So, and then I can give you some feedback that if we're making progress on that. So, and then Alan, if we don't move forward in the right direction, then I would like to have what you suggested.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, I can see this happening, like not that the Welcome Center's plan in expansion, but the Welcome Center could expand, the dog shelter could expand. There are other.
Police department.
Right.
Yes.
That's what I said, you know, so like it's gonna come up again because they're gonna plan and do something, and then that's gonna have an impact in the park. You know, not that even the BMX park or something like that. I mean, yeah.
So a master plan would be good to be developed starting soon to assist in making this these expansions limited or how they could grow or, control it.
Yeah, so that whoever we get as the new city manager, that probably a good thing to take up with them to see about developing more of a comprehensive master plan for the city. Is that fair enough?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Do we want to talk about Arbor Day real quick and then get to the, I
Yeah.
think the big thing in this meeting is the Third Street Park, I guess, after all the input we got. And I don't know if people are ready to vote on that or for a recommendation to council or if they want more time, but
Yeah, we can jump to the Arbor Day real quick then, if that's okay. And Roman, well, I should say Rosa Diamond is working a lot with this. She's going to be recording.
What?
I think he froze.
He froze on mine. Did he froze on everything?
Yeah, he's frozen.
From the kids.
Oh,
And
there we
then,
go.
and then there's going to be a
Hey,
presentation.
Dane, you need to
Yes.
back up because
Okay.
we lost you for a while.
Okay. Is this better?
No.
No, no.
Yeah.
Your whole screen
Oh,
froze.
oh.
We didn't hear you.
Oh, I
lost
see
your
the feed. The feed. Yeah.
Back up
Gotcha.
to where you were. We heard
Gotcha.
Rosa was involved, and that's where the last thing we heard from you.
Okay. Yeah, Roman Jefferson's she's gonna do Ask the Arborist, and she's gonna do a recording. And we just thought doing a regular recording so then the teachers can use it when they want to use it, with the recording. And then she'd get a presentation from Ryan Cox, who's with the Colorado State Forest Service from Durango, who's our local representative. And then she's even possibly going to try to get a video of Smokey the Bear from the U.S. Forest Service. So that's in the throes. And then she has ordered water bottles to get out to each one of the kids that have, probably Arbor Day on that with Cortez. And then we're reaching out to the teachers to get artwork that would be on display at the rec center and also posted on the website. So that's what we're looking at doing this year. And I mean, I think really in this time of COVID, they're just looking at, as long as they have an Arbor Day proclamation, but we want to do more than that to try to keep some engagement with the classes, the fourth grade classes, and this would be the fourth grade classes. So
Nice.
that sound good?
sounds good.
So we don't get to judge artwork this year.
Yeah, not this year. We're thinking maybe next year, take it into next year and just
That
have
was our only time we really got to wield power.
Yep.
Speaking of that, this decision coming up, you get to wield the power.
Right.
Yeah. So, anything else for Arbor Day? And I think I don't think Mancus is going to participate this year. And so that's what's difficult when it's virtual like this. I think there's not as much, engagement to participate. I think Cortez schools are participating and we're not sure yet with Dolores. So.
Well, thank Rosa for spearheading the efforts.
You bet. Yeah, no, she's really good when it comes to doing all the tech stuff. So we're right up her alley or wheelhouse on what she does well on. So. Oh, does anybody want to help with the delivery of the water bottles?
What does that entail?
Just taking them, I think just taking them to the schools.
During the school day, I guess. When do you see this happening? Like when does?
On the actual Arbor Day or the day before? What is?
I think they try to do it like, the day before. It'd be coordinating with Rosa. It'd be whoever's interested. I get her to email you on coordination.
She can email me. I guess I just need an idea. If I get, a heads up ahead of time, I can kind of work it into my schedule.
Okay.
Friday, well, no. Well, anyway,
30.
I'll figure it out, but I just need some date ideas.
Well, isn't
And-
Arbor Day the last day of April?
April 30th, right.
Yeah,
Yeah, but we typically have done it like like the Thursday, the Wednesday or Thursday, the 28th or 29th to align with the school. So,
Mm,
Well, the school's open on Friday.
yeah, well, some of the other schools weren't like Dolores or Mancus. I thought they did a 4-day week, some of
Oh,
those.
okay.
So, yeah,
Gotcha. Yeah.
that's why we,
Oh, all right.
Wednesday, Thursday. So.
well, I could
Well, I
help
know that-
too. I'm sorry, I said I could help too. if
Okay,
needed.
George, I'll put you and Lucia on that, and I'll have Rosa reach out to you.
Sounds good.
Okay. Let's get into the big one.
Well, I guess the big thing here is the Third Street Park and I assume you've all looked at all the material that Dean sent us the last couple days. And I don't know how many of you went to the community meeting. I didn't go to this one because
Well, Alan attended and George attended as well. So, and then we had Arlena was like at the first one. So, yeah.
so I guess the question is, do we want to discuss this and vote on it, or do you need more time, or Dean, what's the time frame on this, do you think?
Well, I think the community garden folks are wanting to get moving on this, just to have more, I've got another garden space. I do want to enter into what you do need to know up front is that we have been contacted by the Kiva across the street, which is next to the police department, and they have 8 garden beds that they said they would make available to the community garden group this summer. So I've reached out to Reed and said these are available. I don't think they have irrigation drip system to them, but they have like they have a hydrant and a spigot or whatnot with a water hose. So people would have to deliver the water to the beds compared to like what we have at the rec center has a drip irrigation system. But it could at least take care of the people that are on the waiting list. On the waiting list, I believe, to at least give them a space. So that's what I suggested to Reed. I said, why could you just take those spaces for this summer and then we can have more lead time for the future of the community garden and for them to do fundraising. And so we're not just, seems like throwing something in so fast and maybe not having the resources to do it all the way we want, how we want to do it. So that's what I've thrown out to him right now. So,
Dean, are you suggesting this as an alternative?
no, temporary, just an interim step. I still would like to see something happen on the south side, but it'd be an interim step. So maybe this decision wouldn't have to be as quick and we could have more, or not even the decision, but the implementation of it would have more time for resources to be gathered. Because it's going to take, these gardens aren't, there's a lot of resource that goes into that when you get the boxes and the drip system. And, if you get, one of the concerns I have is to have the appropriate fencing, because that's one of the biggest things is, are we going to have an 8-foot high chain link fence going around the garden? Or are we going to try to have more of a more decorative fence like we have at the rec center that looks, has a better look to it?
Right.
Well, there was also, you said you requested the city planner to think about expansion for parking in that area too. That could
Well-
come in later and we probably would be best to wait to see if all these things can come together at once.
Well, I think you could vote with contingencies, I mean, if other things were to come in, like if parking truly is an issue, then that's part of the caveat is that there would be additional parking. I don't know did everybody see that, what I sent you from Tracy Hughes yesterday? So she was suggesting that you could actually have diagonal parking, or angled, I should say angled parking that would come in off the north side of the park. If that's truly an issue, because that's one of the issues that one of the resident Amber Kennedy has brought forth is her concern for parking of the community garden folks that come in. Well, if we could use some of that right away for angled parking, maybe that, you'd have to change where the sidewalk goes. But if that's truly a concern, because I think anybody that's went to that park, it is a narrow street. It's without question.
Yeah, I didn't see anything. I saw the email that said you were going to send the request to Tracy, but I didn't see any response.
Oh, I thought I'd sent that out on. Did you get anything from?
Well, I think Tracy's response was that the one where she showed the purple area in her
Yes.
drawing. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
I don't know why George didn't, but
So it was like this.
she showed the purple area. Up top.
Here's my low tech way of sharing things. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was just there's power poles there, so I don't know if that was incorporated in that.
Yeah, she said something about working around the power poles, and I don't know how that would work. And maybe you could just angle park out to a certain point, and then maybe it wouldn't be all the way through. I mean, I'm sure there's various ways to do that.
Well, that was a nice design concept, but who's going to pay to rip out the curb and develop the parking area?
Yeah, and I would assume at this point it'd be the city,
Well,
I mean,
I'm just saying Tracy
yeah,
is not
yeah,
the public
Tracy,
works
exactly.
director. Is
Right,
not the
right.
public works director, so she can design a cute parking area. But this is kind of going back to the library, jumping in your ballpark. Is somebody at Public Works going, yeah, we can do that project within our current budget this year, and go in there and, knock down the curb, because without the curb coming down and the sidewalk, being modified, I think there's a sidewalk there.
Yeah, there is a sidewalk, correct.
Well,
Yep.
so we're suggesting that people expand parking into an area where we have a curb and a sidewalk. Well, you've got to kind of like modify that, and somebody's got to do it. And then it's not going to be just tell Tracy it's such a good design, we decided to take it out of the planning budget.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. No, that's a good point. So actually now the Public Works is saying they're gonna take care of parking lots. So so maybe I could get with Phil, and maybe, I don't know that it happened this year. Obviously, it's not
Right.
Yeah. So I would, it'd have to be entertained for next year then. I mean, if it's really a concern to try to address, and it's bigger than the park, right? I think it's about addressing some of the neighborhood parking issues they have.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be a good idea for any user of the park, regardless of it's the community garden group,
Along with that community garden, how big is the waiting list, and how much is the urgency for them to expand gardens?
I'm not sure if it was 6 or 8 people on the waiting list. I mean, there's, more than, that's why I think they're going to have like 8 or, they were looking at 8 or 9 garden plots, but it was definitely a waiting list and it was also too, a lot of the people that were on the waiting list were on the south side of Cortez. So it would be closer to where they live to have that. And I think the other point of this whole exercise is it's the word equity, trying to get some sense of balance in the community where facilities or amenities are located. So part of this whole exercise is about equity.
And how many people, there was only a couple of people that were really against it, wasn't there?
Correct. The Amber Kennedy, which lives across the street, north side. And then, Maggie Archibek, who lives next door on the west side that has the chickens. And we won't talk about the chickens too much. Yeah.
Are we gonna need a chicken garden too?
Yeah. No, anyway, I'm on tape, so I better not say anymore. So anyway, and she flipped her vote. She had originally voted yes, but then talked to the other neighbor, and I think Amber then persuaded her to do another, to go no with it because of I think the use by the kids. So that's what I had done with Amber. I had said, okay, furnish me some photos with some kids playing in that area. And so you saw most of the photos were not of kids playing in that area. Heck, if I was her, I would have probably staged some kids in that area playing football or something. But, she went back to look at her photos and really, I mean, the only ones, there was some kids sledding. I think that was one of the things, is that's a hillside. So that's a good starting point for a sledding hill. And then it showed like a girl riding her bicycle around the park area. So that was the two uses I saw from the photos of actually that went into the space that the community garden would be in. And then she says, and I'll believe that there's youth football games, but I never saw any pictures or anything to suggest that space would impede upon a youth football game. When Reed and I did the measurements, there's a right of way into the park of about 20 feet. So we were starting that community garden would be 20 feet in from the park. And we would want to do that. We don't want to go anything into that right of way. And Alan knows this as well. You wouldn't go into the right of way. And so then the garden would be 30 feet wide. And then we went from 60 feet long to 50 feet long to try to have to where the walkway into the park is somewhat impeded by the garden, but by shortening it 10 feet gave better access through that walkway. So anyway, and so then there's another 50 feet from the south edge of the garden all the way to where the basketball hoop post is. So there's 50 feet of space of width that they can go across the park. And then there's it's about another 130 feet of length that they can go from one side of the park to the other. So just to kind of give you an idea. Now, like a youth soccer field, and George can attest to this context, that it's about a youth soccer field's about 90 feet wide by, around, I think 160 feet long. So just to kind of give you a context so it'd be a little bit wider than what like the youth soccer fields we're playing on. And
I had a quick question. Why did you not consider using the South Side neighborhood park area? And I had this weird idea in my head. It would be like, imagine a garden on top of the old high school parking lot. Just visually, that was kind of a neat concept to think that we've converted a parking lot for an old high school into a garden plot. I assume we don't have water right near there because it was a parking lot. But
right.
That area it designated in the park was supposed to be for lower income housing, but that was also based on Elm Street being continued. And I know those kind of things aren't going to happen for, I'm guessing, several years. It seemed like that area would be super, but maybe I'm missing something. Is it the water or what other issues?
Well, I think it's a matter of keeping that 3 acres whole for that, if there's a housing development that comes in there. for the 3 acres. So whatever is on the east side of Elm Street would be the housing development. And I think we still could work on a design plan down the road to get the community garden, a community garden area in that new park area, you know,
Okay,
somewhere.
right.
I think we could still, and I think the thought is if we do one here at the 3rd Street Pocket Park, that's 8 blocks away from, then if you put it like at Market Street Pocket Park, you would be 2 blocks away. So you're not really spreading out your garden space
Right.
areas. So the thought was putting it at 3rd Street Pocket Park would space out where the community gardens are located. Again, looking at that equity, the equity formula of trying to get these community gardens spread out in the community.
I guess maybe a master plan would help with all this. I mean, we could look at the map and all the parks and where they're going, you know, for gardens and uses and slate uses. It would be kind of helpful for the overall future as things go in, and how important maybe this park is or this garden compared to the other ones coming down the road.
Yeah, I guess we are where we are. And
Yeah.
on that, yeah, it would help. We do have a master plan for Parks and Rec.
Right.
Right.
I just don't know that we have a comprehensive plan for the whole entire city at this point. So, and that's needing to be driven by the city council and the city manager.
Well, I think it's important to keep these spaces available for use, and this is one use along with other uses. And to me, you know, we're trying to accommodate use of everybody in this area. So I think it's kind of important to have the garden as well as the open area for the other kids. And I think it makes the most use out of the space that we have. And the idea of promoting a parking lot to help with all the relief, you know, we're kind of trying to cover everybody's basis and still not exclude anybody. I would hate to exclude anybody in potential good use for the area.
I can say we had one patron, I think her name was Heather, that was concerned about the garden, but once Reed or Kira showed the layout, who'd be the local coordinator for the community garden group, showed her the plan, she was excited then that where it was going and that it was the footprint that was being looked at. So that was, and then I know there was another person, I think her name was Mrs. Espinoza, was being also followed up with Kira to see if that met her expectations of, you know, where it could go. So I think a couple people were more of like, we're concerned, but we see a need for this. We just want it to be in a place that doesn't take away from the other parts of the park. So those were people that I thought you could work with. Now I thought Amber Kennedy and Maggie, they weren't very workable. I mean, it's just like, no, we don't want this in the park. And there was no trying to work with those two individuals towards any resolution.
I think the word you would use is there's no way to mitigate their concerns.
Yep.
And
That's right.
And, you know, they're pretty hell bent on that specific area having been a opportunity that young people are using, but I didn't see any evidence of it. You know, when I've driven by, I haven't driven by continuously, and talking to other people that had driven by, they hadn't seen that area being used. So, now I'm not convinced that that's, you know, a concern. The other thing that I found amusing was there were ancillary issues that had nothing to do with a garden group using it, bringing up issues of like transient or vagrant people hanging out there and deer hanging out there and other things that, you know, having a garden there shouldn't have really any impact on it.
Yeah, but then like George has brought up, and I'm a believer of this. The more activity you have in a park, you may be
Oh, yeah.
discouraging less deviant behavior in the park. And so all I wanted to bring up, just to cite for the minutes, that, I did contact the police department and to see how many calls had transpired. And since 2016, they had 5 calls for that park. And so the whole prospect that there's a lot of deviant behavior, one of two things is happening. Either the deviant behavior is being allowed and no citizen is following up to make a phone call to take care of it. Because if there's only 5 calls since 2016, that's 1 call a year. So I thought that to be, I don't know, unless other people think differently. Do you think 1 call is a lot of inappropriate behavior going on in a park if they only have 1 call per year?
Would they only have that, I guess, documented because of the calls that came in? Or would there be anything that, were a police, like those pictures that you sent where there were some police cars there? I guess that's what, from one of the residents of concerned citizens. So like how often do the police patrol there, I should say? Or was it called in?
I'm sure it was called in. That's what I would be assuming. That was a police call, with them being on site with 2 police vehicles. And yeah, so I think they should have any record of any activity that they had to take care of at that park should have been on that list.
Well, you can see the park. It's pretty low profile park. It probably gets patrolled the same amount as the neighborhood. But you can see in the park that there's not really much indication of vandalism going on for years. I mean, that park has got no graffiti on it. It's got no damage to the trees. The basketball goal is still intact.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's really a target for vandalism.
Right.
The picnic.
Yeah, and I think with more activities there too, it'll help, from vandalism or, just nefarious activity.
I agree.
Yeah, and it's basically mostly day use. There's no lighting there other than the neighborhoods. I don't think there's a light in the park. So most of it's going to be day use anyhow.
That's one of the things we did talk about is at the neighborhood meeting with Reed, is about maybe getting a solar powered security light or some type of security light if the garden was placed in there, to have some type of lighting that may deter, that it could be more easily seen for somebody doing any activity in the garden that they shouldn't be.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I feel like I'm at a point where I'm comfortable enough making a motion that we should support the community garden going into the 3rd Street Pocket Park as outlined, on the drawings and diagrams that we've received. Then that they should not put a fence beyond the height of the adjacent fence.
So that adjacent fence, I mean, are we talking
Well,
8 foot?
well, I would say, let me say, not to exceed 6 feet.
Okay.
I don't think anything beyond 6 feet, I think, would be obtrusive. I mean, a park with an 8-foot high fence is not very appealing.
Well, I think with the location of where it's at, I think by code, I don't think it can be higher than a certain amount of height. They want to get it high enough to probably keep the deer out of it. Other than that, I think it should be 6 foot or lower.
Yeah, the fencing to the east side of the park next to the house, that's 8 foot high fencing. The fencing that's on the south side of the park is 6 foot high fencing, and I believe on the west side of the park I believe that was 6 foot high fencing. So, and I would agree with you. I think 6 foot high fencing is anything more than that seems a little bit over the top, whether code allows or not, but code would dictate that, obviously. So.
And one other thing I don't think has been mentioned, I forgot to bring
Well,
up.
You
If they have,
should ask if there's a second first.
I second it.
Okay.
And what I was gonna mention is if they do have the compost, to maybe have that, if it's possible, covered so there's no smell drifting out of the compost into the neighbor's house.
Okay.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Is there any way to prevent that smell? Like to minimize it so there's none of that? Cause yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Are they
I
gonna
just wanna-
have compost there or not?
I think there'll be some compost there. You know, they usually have an area like even at the rec center, but you know what? I've never
I've never smelled
noticed.
it at the rec center, so that's good.
Yeah. So I think whatever they've done has been successful because I've never smelled it either. All the times I've been out there, I think if it's of manure related, they usually get that out in the beds almost right away. And I don't think they keep it in a container. And I would throw out too, remember there's the lady that has chickens right next door, and I would believe there'd be manure in that area as
Oh,
well.
yeah.
So just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I just thought it'd be something for them to be aware of, just so there's no issues
Yeah.
come up down the.
Yeah,
down
we
the
don't
line.
need to be part of the getting more
problem.
smell. Yeah. So 6-foot high fence. Okay. Okay, go ahead, Mr.
we-
Chairperson.
Does everybody want to vote on the motion then? Are we prepared to vote on the motion?
Do we?
Well, it's been,
do
I
we
mean,
have
there's,
people?
I am, but there may be others who want to have more discussion.
yeah, right now we're at the point it would need to be further discussion. And upon further discussion, then you have a first and a second, and you have to bring it to a vote.
After
I
further
mean-
discussion, or are we voting?
Well, if does anybody else have, Alan's trying to bring up, is there any further discussion that anybody else would like to have before we bring it to the official vote?
Well, I just wanted to say that basically I'm against it because I think that small pocket park should be left for the neighborhood and I don't think a garden fits in there and I just think that park should be for the neighborhood and that with the parking problem and it's just too small an area to put a garden in and still have a usable park. And I just think the garden people need to go find someplace else. That's just my,
Sure.
And I understand that, Tom. Do we know, I don't know if Dean knows if they've searched for another location? Do they have another location, an alternate location identified anywhere?
Well, I would think we would try to have like, we looked at one point, Market Street Pocket Park or at the new neighborhood park. So I would think at this point, those would be the two optional locations that would be looked at if this one isn't supported to move forward with.
Well, that Market Street Park is a bigger park and I believe that I live in that area and go by there and I think that Market Street Park gets more use than the 3rd Street Pocket Park.
That was, I agree with you on that. And that's one of the things why we looked at the 3rd Street Pocket Park, maybe not getting as much use as what Market Street Pocket Park. So maybe the better site would be then at the neighborhood park if this isn't supported.
I'll be honest, if what I like to do, because I guess I don't live in town, and there's all these parks that I guess I'm just not very familiar with, and I should familiarize myself with them. So if I can get a list of all the different parks and I can familiarize myself, then maybe I can contribute more.
Yeah, I'll send out, there's a master plan with the different parks on it. And I think I know I've sent it out in the past, and I don't know if, how many have a copy of that, but I'll send that out again with, just to make sure all the new advisory board members have that.
Okay.
Hey, Dean, if this, I know it may be a waste of money, but there's also timing. The South Neighborhood Park is, I understand it is a location that this all can all go to. It's a bigger area. But is it something we can do temporarily and then move over to there? Or do we want to do this in a permanent type format? Because I think you can put up fence and build a garden and everything else and take it away and change the use back to it temporarily, without too much problem. I don't know. It was just an idea of this, because it sounds like there's a need for this now, or a desire because of the backup. And the South Neighborhood Park is still down the road. So I didn't know if there was something that could be done temporarily.
I would prefer that this is more of a permanent move with the resources that would be gone to this. And I mean, to be respectful to the community garden group, I think it's a fairly big undertaking for any of this. I mean, for when you look at the group and their capacity. So I would prefer it be more of a permanent in nature. And like I've mentioned, I believe they still have the Kiva option for the waiting list. So I would think those 8 garden beds over at Kiva would address their waiting list for this year. So I think with that opportunity that's come up, it gives more time, if this isn't the chosen site, to look at alternatives. And it might be later in the year where this comes up again to find a home for this.
Hey, Dean, that last meeting with the community, how many residents actually showed up?
It was just a handful again. I mean, it was about, we had about 8 people sign, 7 or 8 people signed the sheet, but George and Alan were there and signed the sheet, as well as Rachel Medina again. So there was really only about, beyond our group of city folk, 4 or 5 residents.
So, and basically 2 to 3 residents were the only ones that were opposed to it,
Yeah, two were adamantly opposed. 2, I mean, I think we've had a couple, at least one was there, Heather, and I think she got hers appeased by where it was going to be located and approved it. And then we had another resident send in an email, and then we were reaching back out to her to see if she could, and she had been reached back out to, she just had not responded back yet.
okay.
So
Yeah, let me explain. I really respect Tom's position on this. And had I not gone to the last meeting, I might be along his line of thinking as well. But I met Kira there, who was coordinating the garden plots, who lives in that neighborhood and is a user of that park. And she was excited about it. And there were other people there who were in the neighborhood, were going to use garden plots there, and were excited about that opportunity. And I'll be honest, I mean, most people could have a garden in their backyard. Why do they need a public spot? But people like that. And it seems to be popular, and it seems to be growing and doing well. Plus, they seem to have an ability to create extra food that then goes to the community pantry. So there's a lot of positive spin-offs and a lot of other nonprofits that are getting involved with the park and having a lot of, I don't know, external benefits that are helping out the community. And when I look at that bigger picture of what's happening, I was kind of enthused with that concept versus the impact it could have on robbing potential park space usage, particularly when I haven't seen that usage taking place. Because when I drive by, they're using the park down by the basketball court, and that's where they were hanging out. And they weren't using it on that grassy hill, which is where the garden is. So I think that, I think it's a win-win for the community if there is this community garden space there. And I think the biggest suggestion of how well it's going to work is if all the plots aren't taken, then they've cited it wrong, and there isn't a demand for it. Because again, I don't even understand why people go to a community garden, because everyone can pretty much have one in their backyard. But what do I know? I have a backyard and I don't want to grow anything because I hate weeding, and I go to farmers market every weekend. So I don't even understand why people have gardens. But I support the concept of the community garden and what they're doing, and the spinoffs and the other nonprofits involved is pretty exciting. So
Thank you.
yeah, and like one of the adjacent neighbors, Casey, on the other side, was at the public meeting. He was all excited about it, and I don't know if he'll have a plot there or not, but he was very supportive of it. So, it's a sleepy little pocket park that's not getting used. And now all of a sudden there's a community garden group with a lot of enthusiasm, and they're growing, and they've got a lot of volunteers, and they tie into other nonprofits. And I think, well, okay, this is kind of an interesting experiment. Let's continue it, and that's where I'm coming from. And that's why I'm voting in favor of it. And that's why I made the motion. That's why I made the first motion. And, that's how I'm going to vote.
Well, I was there too, and I saw the enthusiasm. I think with the park, with the garden there, we're still allowing other uses. We're minimizing the impact. We're giving support to a group that finds a need for it. And I think overall, it kind of does tie the 3rd Street area, that park, into the community, whereas it was, I think this park right now has the danger of kind of falling apart because of no use. I mean, I go by there every other day because on the way to the rec center, and a lot of times I don't see any use of it. I see people transporting through it and that type of thing, but not just using it. I think this is a good use for it, as well as accommodating the needs and the people that have concerns. I think it's still trying to address all those concerns and accommodating the need that everybody else shows for the park.
Well, it sounds to me, the impression I'm getting that the community garden is just going to help revitalize the area to some degree, which is always a good thing. So with that said, I'd vote for it.
So I guess, do we want to go ahead and vote then?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's why we made a motion.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Yep, that's your.
Go ahead and ask for the opposition, and then you should vote, Tom.
So all opposed? No.
Okay. So
the motion carries.
no, the motion, the motion, I mean, wouldn't you have to have a quorum to pass it?
No, quorum is to conduct
I guess
business.
we have the quorum, yeah, so it does pass then 3-1, correct? So. Okay.
Okay. So is it 8 o'clock? I can't see.
Yeah, it's just past 8 o'clock, like 8:03.
Well, I need to get going, so do we have anything else we need to really discuss, or can we close the?
Yeah, I was just going to bring up about the outdoor swimming pool was one of the biggest things. So Michelle Duval, the aquatic supervisor, and I are going to bring that before the city council at their April 27th meeting about it being open. I haven't heard any negative from the council, but this is a council decision if they would just, to move forward with opening the outdoor pool. I would hope they would. We're still limited on the staffing. I think Michelle's had about 15 interested high schoolers about lifeguarding, but of those, you can't figure all the 15 would pass the certification. That's the issue you get into, that they have to swim so far and pass certification. So, we may be in the 10 or less mark of how many would actually pass and be available for being a lifeguard. So right now I still see, and there's high school sports going on too. And that goes on from till like June 25th, I think, for soccer and track. So there will be some kids involved in sports activities that would have to be scheduled around. So it's just an interesting dynamic this summer that the high school sports, because of COVID delaying them, has now been expanded out till about the end of June. So that it will have an impact on our staffing. So with that said, I think, I'm going to be presenting to council, Michelle and I, that we may have limited staffing and we may have to look at putting our resources to where we think the highest usage of a facility is between the outdoor swimming pool and the indoor rec center pools. So it may look a little different this summer on what the availability of hours based. And I think our job as staff would be to try to find out, look through the past historical trends, when's the highest usage of each facility.
Okay.
You have thoughts, Alan, or?
Yeah. Well,
Yes, he always has thoughts. It's just a matter how much does he want to share of those thoughts.
oh yeah. Well, I'm a staunch advocate of the outdoor pool, and I, was sad that last year was the first year in 31 years that I wasn't able to use the outdoor pool. So I hope that you can, maybe pull away, if you have to, some guarding of particularly at noon hour. That's when the lap swimmers use it. And then right after, it's when the bulk of the kids seem to show up to use the swimming pool outdoors. I mean, if I'm an indoor pool swimmer, I probably would maybe do it in the morning or the evening. Historically, the rec center, though, was always open till later at night. So the lap pool, is wonderful. Like on a Saturday night, the lap pool would be open till 8 p.m. And now during COVID, everything closes at 2 and it's not even open on weekends. So everything has been modified. But I would probably put an emphasis on keeping the staffing at the outdoor pool during the middle part of the day for sure. And if you had to close the indoor pool, I would close it, from, noon to, well, right now it's only 8 to 2, just so maybe you would close it at noon then.
Yeah, I just see, Alan, I agree with you. I think the direction we're headed is if we get into this limited staffing position, that having like the outdoor pool, open, during the week, at least Monday through Friday, and then maybe we're shifting more resources to the indoor pool over the weekend.
Right.
For the leisure pool. So, but I would still, if it's at all possible, still like to keep the lap pool and maybe like the lazy river available for weekly exercise purposes as much as we could, because I think that's what I look at. And though, you still have options for families to go, and most of the families for the rec center are using it more on the weekends, from the trends I've seen. So that's where I would look at the shift of resources. And this year's budget, we don't have anything for private pool parties, that's not going to be offered at this point, because again, you got to look at there's the benefits of community benefits up to individual benefits. And like a pool party is more of an individual benefit.
Yeah.
And just like the swim team, they would have to, like typical, they furnish their own lifeguards when they use the pool. So we shouldn't have to use much of any resource besides opening the pool and making sure the water's, chemically balanced for them. So otherwise they pretty much, have their own use and use their own guards and whatnot for that use. So, and then on Monday and Wednesday evenings, we weren't going to open up because we had cut back on the budget for that. So we are really just talking about, like you're saying, Alan, the lap swim, and we wouldn't probably be offering swim lessons at this time because swim lessons right now are pretty much parent and child together without instructors in the water. And so I think we're not looking at offering the swim lessons right now until some things change in that area. So primarily it would just be that noonish time for the lap swimming and for the public in the afternoon. And I guess that's what the council has to balance is that amount of time that we would be open worth having the outdoor pool open, because it is in a typical year, it costs about $180,000 to operate the outdoor swimming pool. Of that, we usually take in about 50 to 60,000 in revenue. So the outdoor pool is subsidized around anywhere from like $100,000 to $125,000 a year, subsidized by our taxes. But that's what, there's not everything is meant to make money. And there's a lot of things, the library included, the rec center, others that are subsidized by taxes to operate them, to provide that service to the community.
Dean, have the high schools in Mancos and Dolores been alerted about jobs needed for the lifeguard?
Yeah, we're putting it out. I think, I would need to check to see how far that outreach is, but we definitely have put out that we need lifeguards. And it's a matter of to what degree have we gone to?
Because
I can
those
check into that.
those communities probably use it as much as anybody else. So it'd be nice to have some help from them.
Well, and typically we do get Dolores and Mancos students to help with lifeguarding from what I've seen in the past. So we draw from Cortez, Dolores, and Mancos for those lifeguards.
Okay.
And then I'd like to table the next one with the Native American art panels. I think that's still in a very infancy stages that I'd like to gather more information. I am starting to work with a local group on that. And maybe it'd be a partnership with the arts committee as well. We're looking at maybe doing repainting of the skate park area and to get murals back up where that it really is an interesting dynamic when you do the murals at the skate park, that it doesn't get tagged as much because there is a code, an unwritten code, that a lot of kids don't tag new artwork that's done. It's usually when it fades and gets old, like we have right now. Now that skate park is getting tagged right and left. So it is a very interesting dynamic when you do freshen up the artwork, how that doesn't get tagged as much.
Interesting.
Yeah. That's all I had. And where would you like your next? I'd like to, as Lucia, and I don't know if it works for you, to where we can continue to Zoom you in or get you on a phone, like for future meetings. I was wanting to have them out on the park sites.
Sounds good. And if there's it changes week to week as far as my time here in Durango goes, and I don't know how long I'll continue doing this, but If I happen to have an 8:30 meeting here, then I'd Zoom in, but if my meeting is later, then I can make it in person. So it just depends on what time I have to be here.
Okay, yeah, but
And I'll just play it by ear. No
I'd sure
pun
like to
intended.
make the effort though, just to make sure you're included through phone or, through a
Okay.
Zoom, even if we do a site meeting, if that's, possible. So would the advisory board, would you like to have the next meeting around Centennial Park or any particular park would you like to see first?
I think we should meet
Yeah, I think, maybe Centennial Park, because we might know more about the band shell, the library or something, and maybe we could kind of meet towards that end.
Yeah, and then we also are we are adding those other disc golf baskets. And that's been an interesting thing too, that we actually had, because we had markings out on the Centennial Park, there was a resident who says their house was getting hit by the discs. So we are actually looking at relocating one of the tee boxes, tee box number 2, to be a better flight pattern. It just shows how certain disc golfers, how far they can chuck those things. When I show you on site which house they've hit, you're like, holy smokes, how did that happen? But some of those folks can chuck a disc golf quite a ways, and they had to they actually re-stuccoed their house. And so our park superintendent and another park staff member met with them to say, hey, where do you see the issue lying? And so we really tried to work with them and be more mindful of where these new baskets are going, and are now going to look at changing the tee box, because we want to be, friendly with the neighbors around the park, that these activities don't negatively impact them. So.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, don't you move the basket and not the tee box? I mean, if you move the basket, it changes the angle of flight. So, but the box could stay there. As far as the approach, it could just be used in a different angle.
Well, we'll show you on site next month on why we had to move that. But if you look at the flight pattern, we're moving that tee box further into the east, so it has a different flight travel that wouldn't be as apt to hit the house. So I think it is, we're going to meet at 1:00 with one of the disc golfers who kind of initiated this effort to run this all past him, so we can get from the disc golf community that this is acceptable to them to do this.
Well, and I think that helps too, because it keeps it out of the road. Yeah, where you're talking about is along the road there, and
Correct.
They can catch air currents and just keep flying, and the driver discs are a little bit stronger than the other types. So.
Yep. So, okay. Well, we'll plan on meeting.
Dean, where are the Native American art panels proposed? What area were they?
Yeah, I think they would be at Veterans Park and Parque de Vida are the 2 areas that were being looked at.
I mean, another park area to consider holding the meeting at would be an area where the panels might be developed. So that's all I was going towards there.
Yeah. And it's so hard to say how soon they will be. It's kind of been an ever evolving thing, and I just don't know how much traction. So maybe that could be like Veterans Park or Parque de Vida, a meeting in June, and it still probably would be in line. So, yep. Okay. Well, I think Tom needs to close this out if we can here, if that's okay. 8:18.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much for everybody attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
You guys have a great day.
Have a good weekend.
You as well. Thanks.
You do the same. Bye.